M109 is a 155 caliber self-propelled howitzer in American tech tree, and German, and British, and Italian, and Israeli again. They are pretty much the same vehicle, but they are not exactly the same. In this video you will only see M109A1 from an American tree, because this is where this SPG originates, and because it's one of the best variants of this vehicle, even if the differences are not very significant. To fight tanks, M109 uses high explosive shells, so just like all vehicles using HE rounds, the damage is unpredictable when used on heavily armored vehicles. Either I was able to one-shot the opponent instantly, or the round dealt no damage. It's all or nothing. There is rarely something in between. Despite explosives penetrate only 61mm of armor and most tanks have even thicker plates, it's still possible to destroy even the heaviest tanks when a projectile explodes over weak areas, such as the roof of the turret, ground right beneath the enemy vehicle, or the turret itself, but as close to the hull as possible. I was aiming at turrets almost always, because it's the easiest place to hit, so probably most reliable. At least as much as high explosive rounds could be called reliable, because even when hitting turret, sometimes rounds fail to deal damage, and it's great if it at least breaks the enemy's cannon or tracks, because sometimes there could be no damage at all. But anyway, satisfaction of one-shotting enemies with big explosion is worth it, even if occasionally it disappoints when used on heavy tanks. Another type of high explosive round available for this SPG has a proximity fuse that activates within 3 meters of enemies, which is usually used against planes. This vehicle wasn't as good in anti-aircraft role as dedicated SPAAs, but the ability to shoot down planes was useful when there were no other targets around, and it felt even more satisfying when the pilot, who wasn't even aware that someone is shooting at him, gets instantly destroyed. That's how powerful these rounds are. The least amount of damage I ever did to a plane was in this clip, where after a critical hit, aircraft still crashed into the ground, but I was surprised how the plane managed to survive these few seconds after the hit. But rounds with proximity fuse are not universal. They are bad against ground targets, since most of the time they activate too early and deal no damage, especially when used against heavily armored opponents that are not so easy to damage even with direct hits. In most cases it's better to spend some time reloading the cannon than expose the vehicle for enemy fire, knowing that the proximity fuse will probably mess up your shot. But there are two exceptions. When opponents are closer than 300 meters, which is less than fuse's arming distance, so at short range both shells work the same way, or if you know that the enemy is squishy, because less armored opponents can be destroyed even without direct hit. The most difficult part when playing M109 is not damage, but hitting the enemies, especially distant ones, because just like the most high caliber howitzers, this vehicle's rounds are quite slow. Muzzle velocity is 680 meters per second, which is noticeably below average when compared to regular tanks, but not too bad compared to other howitzers, or even the same M109 in Israeli tech tree, which uses even slower rounds. There are also smoke shells, but I never saw a reason to use them. If I can shoot the cannon, I'll better shoot something very explosive at the enemy than try to hide myself and then have to reload again, because the reload is quite long, from over 17 to 13.3 seconds depending on your crew skills. Such reload is not too bad for a high caliber SPG, but still longer than pretty much everyone you will be playing against. And that's especially bad when there are both air and ground targets, which requires you to frequently switch between two ammunition types, or limit yourself to attack only one type of enemies and not use the full potential of this SPG. The heavy machine gun on top of the vehicle, the one that German M109 doesn't have, was extremely useful. First of all, as a weapon, so I was not completely defenseless during a reload, especially if loaders are knocked out and reload becomes even longer, but also a machine gun was useful as a tool to clear trees and fences so that my high explosive rounds would not accidentally detonate on them. The vehicle's turret rotation is slow, only up to 11 degrees per second. It's especially unfortunate that the turret is located at the back of M109, because in this case it's safer to peek from cover exposing the back of the vehicle, which requires rotating the turret all the way to the side, which takes a while. I often had to rotate the whole vehicle to get the cannon in position faster, especially when trying to aim at planes that move back and forth so quickly that the turret's rotation can't keep up. Cannon's elevation is 75 degrees, which is 5 degrees more than German and Italian versions of M109. Elevation is also slow, but very useful when attacking air targets. Technically, there is a small blind spot right above the vehicle, but planes never attacked me right from above and rarely attacked me in general, because unlike SPAs that leave visible lines of traces in the sky, this SPG destroys planes without them even realizing that someone was shooting at them. Cannon's depression is very bad, only 3 degrees, so even small hills are going to be a problem. Survivability, on the other hand, is great when it comes to getting hit with rounds that are designed to penetrate armor, since the armor is thin enough to not activate APHE fuses and penetrations create almost no spalling. So the vehicle can soak up a lot of hits, especially considering that it has quite a big crew of 6 members. At the same time, M109 is more susceptible to heavy machine gun fire, which not every vehicle has, explosive rounds that not every opponent uses, and artillery, which is too random to use it against this vehicle reliably. Occasionally these things do kill me, but I think the ability to soak up tank rounds outweighs the disadvantages. Having no armor positively affects M109 maneuverability. It felt like a medium tank or even better. The maximum speed is 56 kph, which was difficult but possible to reach even off-road, while the reverse of 12 kph is nothing special, but enough for comfortable gameplay. Usually reverse is only needed to move a short distance behind nearest cover for reload. In arcade, where tanks can survive with just one crew member, this SPG destroys tanks just as easily as in other game modes. As long as the round's explosion finds a way inside the tank, it's a one-shot. Additionally, arcade aiming cross was more beneficial for me than my enemies. It allowed me to easily hit distant targets that would be difficult to hit without using a rangefinder. Especially useful is that aiming cross is visible in binocular mode, which makes it very simple to shoot over hills without even exposing the vehicle. In arcade, M109 and planes become more deadly to each other. Planes knew that I had less armor, so they were attacking me with machine guns very often, but I had a lead indicator, so I could destroy them more easily as well. Especially useful was that high explosive rounds instantly one-shots incoming bombers from further away, before they even have a chance to drop their bombs, because regular SPAs are more effective at shorter distances. So in this regard, I think M109 was even better. Overall, I think this SPG feels great in arcade, even better than in realistic mode. M109 has a big cannon that creates a big boom on enemy tanks. What else do you need in a video game? This SPG was so satisfying to play that I'm not even mad that Gaijin put it in half of the nation tech trees. It's universally useful at any stage of the battle because it can fight both tanks and planes, Its reload, despite being long, as it should be, is not annoyingly long, and it's not very sensitive to being up-tiered. I would rate M109A1 8 proximity fuse rounds that for some reason detonate over trenches in test drive out of 10. Since usually tech trees have a lot of regular tanks that are very similar, researching new vehicles often becomes repetitive. But this SPG offers satisfying and different gameplay, which is why I can recommend buying Talisman for it and use it to grind tech trees while still having fun.